I can't even imagine. Have you heard those words and thought to yourself, neither can I? But it happened. You lived it. But most importantly, you survived it. We hear you, we see you, and we're here to talk about it. We're two moms, lifelong best friends, and we've both experienced traumatic, life-altering events involving our children.
Welcome to episode 3 of I Can't Even Imagine podcast. I'm Victoria.
And I'm Stephanie.
Welcome. We just wanted to do a quick disclosure for everybody that we are purposely leaving out our children's names per their request and for their anonymity since they are minors and they cannot give their own consent. If you feel called to comment on any of our social media pages or podcast platforms and you know us and our stories, we want to ask you just to leave their names out of the comments, please. We know their stories are on the internet somewhere, but we want to be able to control a tiny bit of their stories if we can. So thanks.
So Victoria, how was your week?
Good.
Yeah.
Feeling a lot better.
I was going to say, you sound a lot better.
Thanks. Yes, I feel a lot better. I was feeling rough the other day.
Yeah, I should tell a little story about how you had to delete so much of your audio out of our last episode.
Oh, it was awful. The mouth breathing was just insane. I could just hear it. It was horrible. So I hope it doesn't sound terrible.
I think you sound beautiful.
Thanks. It was a lot of editing.
Yeah.
There was a lot of late nights on that one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm still figuring this out because I do not know what I'm doing.
Yes, we do.
I mean, yeah.
Fake it till you make it, baby. We're doing it.
Total professionals.
It's just this has been busy ever since September started. My calendar went from nothing to everything.
Yeah.
And it felt like in a matter of like 24 hours.
I like that though. I don't like
it is good. I do like staying busy. It's definitely better than the monotony of summer and trying to find things to do, especially with 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like between church activities, school, soccer, piano lessons. Now she wants to do gymnastic lessons and doing the podcast and finding time to fit that in. And then I know that my photography season is about to start and like I have every color of the rainbow on my Google Calendar right now.
Yeah, that's how my calendar is.
That's how your calendar is all the time
I know.
now.
Now that we've added this onto our plate, now I've got a lot more colors.
Oh, yeah.
So I did want to update you.
What's that?
Last time I just was so foggy with my brain, I forgot to update you on Chad, his update. And if we all don't remember, Chad is my ChatGPT best friend. Mm-hmm. His name is Chad. And I asked Chad about the school system here and if we ever went to school.
Get out of here. She's got to prove me wrong. Watch.
No, I'm not trying to prove you wrong. Well, maybe. But I just want to know because I was so emphatic with my answer of never. That never happened. I just
about the Labor Day, starting school after Labor Day?
Yeah. And I'm like, am I wrong here? Because it was such an emphatic never. So, and I'm going to read Chad's response.
All right, Chad.
All right.
What you got for me?
Good pal Chad. Let's see. He said that this county in particular, like most school districts in the state, traditionally start the school year in mid-August. This has been the case for many years due to Florida's climate, tourism patterns, and educational planning. Starting after Labor Day is more common in the northern states, but in Florida, the mid-August start date allows for an earlier end to the school year, typically in late May or early June, which aligns with the state's summer weather patterns and tourism season. There hasn't been a significant period where schools in your county started after Labor Day. The mid-August start has been the norm for a long time.
Oh, excuse me. How long, Chad? That doesn't answer my your question at all.
In my notes,
he doesn't know.
I know. In my notes, it said it was kind of a no that we never started after Labor Day.
Chad doesn't know. He can't think that far back because that was before.
I need to go to the Historical Society. That's what he said.
We're so old. Oh my God.
So yeah, there's that. So I wasn't wrong and you weren't wrong. So there's good news.
Okay. All right, audience. So if you're as old as we are, take a guess in that age group. What do you think?
Right.
Tell us. Yeah. Comment, please.
Tell us what you think.
We definitely, it was Labor Day. Around Labor Day.
I really don't think so.
I will die on this hill.
I'm going to die on this hill too. Also, yes. I wanted to update you on the podcast idea timeline that we started with in reality.
All right.
When we actually recorded and started our last idea.
Okay.
Because we were talking about it.
Oh, it was. I did see that. It was not this January. It was last year.
Yeah.
I did see that, and I forgot to update you that I had found that out. I was wrong on that.
I actually copied and pasted our entire text exchange just in case.
I know. I know.
It was the December of 2022 that you text me. You said, one thing I really want to do in 2023 is start our podcast. And I said that we should have a segment on the show about secrets of a cleaning lady because I have so much knowledge and I have years of funny and horrifying stories. And then we said something about Mary and how we could have like Mary's Corner where she talks about like online dating and like how awful it is and all the different weird people.
Mary is our other best friend, part of our trio.
Yeah.
That I've known since I was 11 and then introduced her to Victoria. And then we've all been, they went through a period where Victoria she's like, you're not moving in on my best friend. No way. You hated her. Watch. You hated her for a little while.
Yeah.
And then now we're all really close to each other.
Well, I think we got close when we were like 13 or 14. It wasn't that much longer.
Yeah, it was a couple of years.
But at the beginning, I was like, I don't think so. You're my friend. Like you can't have anybody else, right?
That's right.
Whatever. I love Mary. She's great.
We should have her on one day, just for shits and giggles.
I know. Have Mary's Corner tell us all the horrors of online dating that she has experienced. Because you and I have been in relationships with our husbands since I think I'd only remember like Match.com and eHarmony being advertised. I was never on those. I was too poor.
There were no dating apps.
There were no apps when I got married.
There were no apps. Yeah, that's how old we are. There were no apps. There were websites. There were dating websites. And I think you had to pay. Oh, yeah. Like all of them you had to pay.
As I said, I was too poor. I was in college.
Yeah.
Like,
we met people the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
I met mine in a bank.
I met mine in the front row of a concert in New York
That's
City.
right. It was
old-fashioned way.
Your story's way cooler than mine, though.
So that's it for my notes.
Well, let's get rolling. This episode's all about Victoria's story.
So the date was April 14th of 2023. Started like any other normal day where I worked all day as typical. Working probably like almost 70 hours a week or something. That was a short week for me back then.
Oh, yeah.
And one of my employees needed a ride home that day, so I'd taken the back roads, which I normally wouldn't do. I was getting home a lot earlier than normal because I was going to fly out that night to go to North Carolina for a long weekend with my stepmom at her new cabin. I was really excited about it. My aunt and my grandma were going to be there, and they didn't know I was coming, so I was going to surprise them. And my stepmom and I were going to make big glittery signs that read, like, welcome home from prison, Grandma. And
I remember you telling me about this. You were so excited about that trip.
Yeah. Because
that was going to be really funny.
It was going to be really funny. Because my grandma is, like, so docile and sweet and looks like a typical grandma, and then like welcome home from prison, so funny. Because I was going to fly in, my flight was at 9:04 at a little airport in Punta Gorda, so it was like 45 minutes away. And I got home at 4:30. I had to run payroll. I had to pack, and it was just a long weekend. I was coming home Monday. It wasn't anything crazy.
Yeah.
And my kids were pissed that I was leaving. They were so mad at me. Because a month later, we're going on a trip, our girls' trip, our 3 or 4 day weekend girls' trip. And I'd already done that to them twice. And they were like mad because we haven't been on a family vacation since 2018. And that was to Legoland for like 2 days.
Yep.
We're just not vacation people. We never had money to do vacations ever. And then now it's like I didn't have enough money to go on vacation. And then when I finally had enough money to go on vacation, my business is so busy.
Yep.
I can't go on vacation.
Yep. So, you can't win, man.
No. So I'm just not like a vacation. I wish I was a vacation person, but there's literally...
Well, I force you to be a vacation person because I steal you away to go on girls' trips.
Right. But like a family vacation with my family, that just doesn't happen, unfortunately.
When I go on my trips, like my family gets mad and I'm like, I can only afford to pay for me to go on a trip. I'm not paying for everybody else to go.
Yeah, we were going to take the kids to Epcot.
I can't pay for a family of 5 to go. I mean, just to go to Disney, how much was that, you said? You looked at that recently.
I was going to Epcot one day, and I'm a Florida resident. One day, it was over $1,000 to take my husband and I and our 4 children. $1,000 for one day at Epcot. Yeah, no thanks. No. Anyway, so I got home around 4:30. The whole thing was to pack, do payroll, and then leave. And I was kind of rushing, and my kids were all in their rooms, or so I thought, and my husband was outside working out. he came inside really quick to tell me something. I think he was asking me about my exact plans for the weekend because it was kind of a last minute trip. We didn't even talk about like exactly what I was doing, but I knew I had to leave by 6:30 to make it to Punta Gorda for my 9:05 flight. Mm-hmm. And I was like getting ready to change my clothes or something. I had hired somebody to like put a workout plan in place for me. And I talked to him that day at like noon about like my needs. And then I had to fill out like an intake form or whatever for him. And I was in the middle of that. And my husband was inside and he was getting really annoyed because he had his earbuds in and he was getting phone call after phone call, but he couldn't find his phone and it was outside. And my phone was on the charging dock with my watch. So I'm not getting any, and of course my phone's always on silent, and I'm not getting any notifications. And my husband answers the phone very reluctantly because there's a number he didn't know. We just...
Hashtag millennial.
Yeah, these days we just don't do it because all it is friggin' scams. Mm-hmm. But anyways, all I hear him say is something like, yeah, I'm her father. Are they okay? Which hospital? Mm-hmm. And I was like, the fuck? And when he got off the phone, he just said that, get the kids, Nana and our daughter were in a car accident and they're at the hospital. We have to go now. Mm. And I was like, what? I didn't even know she wasn't home. I thought she was home because they were so mad at me for leaving that my husband had promised them he'd take them to the movie theater that night to see the new Super Mario movie. Mm-hmm. And of course, my daughter, she wanted to go to Nana's house because they're kindred spirits.
Yeah, they're besties.
They're like the same soul. It's so weird that how they 70-something years apart and they're like the same person. She's like an old soul and she'd play bingo with Nana and watch Golden Girls and whatever with her. It's great. They're kindred spirits.
They had a beautiful relationship.
Very much so. And I don't know. All I knew at the time was that she was with her. And so I'm like, okay, well, if they're together, Nana always goes the back roads. So it's probably just a fender bender. Like my thought process at the time was like, it's probably just a fender bender. Back roads. I mean, how bad can this be? You know?
I remember when I got the news, my first thought was the smart car.
Right.
Did you think about that at all? I know you know more about how the design than I did, but
well, not really, because my grandfather was a big car guy. Mm-hmm. And before he passed away, he got that car for her, knowing that it has a lot of safety measures in place. It's got a big roll cage in it and everything. And they would always talk about that, the roll cage and how safe it was and whatever. So I didn't really think about that so much. It was just, they didn't give us any information and they're on the back roads. So I didn't think it could be like, what could it be, And so I actually called my stepmom and told her that I might miss my flight, but I'm going to try to make it. Because I thought they were probably just, because of her, they're both of their ages, that they took them to the hospital regardless, to check them out. Like nobody said anything on the phone that would indicate anything more than what I was thinking. Mm-hmm. The lady on the phone, my husband said she seemed calm. And then we packed the kids up and I called my mom to see if she knew what was going on. And she had no idea. Nobody had called her. So she ended up heading to the hospital that they told us to go to, which she was 5 minutes away. Mm-hmm. Anyways, we get in the car and we're driving and there's like a couple ways in and out of that town to get to the main hospital. But we went the main road and we're driving up and we see this massive line of traffic, like miles deep. And then we see my grandma's smart car on the main road in the heart of that town. Now where they're supposed to be.
And I'm sure your heart was just...
Well, actually, I saw the car and it was just the door panel that was off the car.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
It didn't look bad at all.
I remember. Now it's coming back to me when you told me when you went to go see the car, at later that you got like a good look at it. Now I remember you saying that. Yeah.
Yeah. And my husband was on the phone with the hospital, or he was on the phone with... We have like 3 or 4 major hospitals here, and he was on the phone with one of them because he could not remember. He's not from here, so he could not remember what hospital they said.
Okay.
Like, where are we even going?
Yeah.
Are we going to the little tiny rinky-dink hospital literally across the street from the accident? Or are we going to the trauma center? Like, where are we going?
Right.
And then they said go to the trauma center, which then I was like, okay. But maybe it's because of their ages. And, I try not to think the worst right away, even though my brain goes there all the time. And so seeing it and they were literally diverting traffic onto the side roads, like completely off the main road. It was completely just going around. I mean, it was so crazy. And had I left and not dropped my employee off, I would have been in that traffic too. Mm-hmm. Had I not taken the back roads home, which is just weird.
Right.
Weird situation, weird timing. It was the first time I'd ever dropped her off at home, Yeah. So it was just weird. But anyways, so we get to the trauma center and my mom's standing outside talking to the nurses outside the front door. And she didn't look shaken up from my vantage point. And we got there and she was really calm. So then I asked her where my daughter was, and she said they brought her to the CT. And I was like, good, like she's alive. And then I said, where's Nana? And my mom like leaned into me and she whispered she didn't make it. Mm. And then I realized that this is not like a broken arm situation.
Yeah, this is not a fender bender.
No, that this was going to be something that I didn't even know. I had no concept of what we were about to hear. Right. And so they brought us into that little room, and in the middle of the emergency room, they had a social worker there. Mm-hmm. They had a couple of nurses, and the social worker asked if we could, if she could like talk to the kids and hang out with them, not tell them anything, but like hang out with them for a little while. And then another nurse pulled my husband and I out to let us know that my grandmother had passed in the accident. Mm. And I already knew it, obviously, because my mom told me that my husband didn't know. And I didn't tell him that I knew at the time because it was like, I don't know. It was just such a weird, foggy moment. I just, and then they said, okay, come on back.
I feel like in those situations, because obviously I've been there too, everything is so like split second. Yeah. But yet, like, at the same time, I feel like you're like in slow motion.
For sure.
And it becomes so, when you're trying to reminisce and reflect, I feel so, everything's so fuzzy. Like, you know what happened, but.
Right. Yeah.
Why you made those decisions, why you said the things that you said, you're like, I don't know my thought process. It was everything's coming at you all at once.
It almost felt like when people say they're like walking in a fishbowl, that's exactly what it felt like. When they opened, they told us we needed to come back into the emergency room, like the ICU or whatever, the critical care, whatever that unit was. They through the emergency room door, they opened these two doors, and we went left and we went right, and they had her in the middle of the room on a bed with intubation and everything. And the emergency room doctor handed me a bag of her clothes. They had to cut her clothes off. And I thought, oh my God, she's going to be so pissed when she finds out they've cut her brand new school pants off. Like, she just got those and was so proud of them. She's going to be mad. And it's so weird that was one of my first thoughts.
She was in middle school at that time, right?
Sixth grade, yeah.
Is that totally like middle school?
It totally tracks.
Yep.
Yeah. And then she had her Converse that she just got for Christmas, and they were in there too. And I'm like, she's going to be so mad. And anyways, and she's like laying there, and she doesn't look messed up. Like, she's not bloody. I'm like, okay, good. She's not bloody. She's not bruised. But they have her out in a coma. Like, what's going on? And they said that they have to transfer her to the children's hospital. And they said that it was going to take a while and whatever, but they have her in a coma because she hit her head really, really hard. And her brain was swelling. And so they have to put her in the coma to like calm her brain down so it doesn't continue to swell. So they have her sedated and everything. And so they had brought her, they transferred her over to the children's hospital. And at this point, it was probably like 8:30 at night, 9 o'clock at night. And my mom and my son and I went to the children's hospital together. Mm-hmm. And my husband took my girls home because he needed to feed them dinner. And my son, he was 13 at the time. He's like, I'm going with you. So I'm like, okay. My son kept asking and asking about Nana. And I'm like, man, listen. I'm like, I got to tell you something. Like, I had to tell him. Yeah. He's 13. And he's so much like me in that he can handle stuff and he can kind of like not freak out. you know? Mm-hmm. And so I had to tell him that Nana didn't make it. And he's like, you're going to have to tell me exactly what that means so I understand what you're saying to me right now.
Wow.
And I was like, Nana died in the accident. And he lost it in that waiting room. He just wailed. And I've never seen him like that. He doesn't cry.
Yeah.
He's never been a crier. He's just always been so even keeled.
First kid is, I don't know, it's my experience too. It's just so level-headed and not emotional. And then like, if they're going to cry, they're going to go hide in their room and do it. You know? Not like, not like show
me.
it.
I don't cry. This is very rare for me right now.
Right.
I don't really cry in front of people. It's just not my thing.
Right.
So we got all the information we needed to go upstairs, got my picture taken, which of course, that picture is with you every time you need to get a new updated sticker. Mm-hmm. So it looked horrible. I look so awful. And this is so stupid. But I'm like, this big picture's on my sticker, and it's like that from that under, like
like the open your phone when you're not trying to take a selfie
100%.
Moment.
It's like yeesh. So it's just,
triple chin.
It's like that was just one more kick.
Insult to injury. Thanks.
Exactly.
I don't even remember. When did I show up?
I had to call you like midnight and say,
oh, that's right. Cause you had asked me, hey, you were like, if I have to call you really late, will you keep your phone on and come and get me? And I'm like, duh.
Yeah.
Of course I will.
Right.
Yeah.
So I called you at like midnight. I'm like, I got to bring my son home because there's literally a tiny couch.
Yeah.
And he needs to go home, you know? And so you had taken me home at like midnight. Mm-hmm. And I took a shower and I packed a bag. Mm-hmm. And I spent time with my little kids at home. And they were still awake at like midnight.
You can't sleep.
No.
Your sibling was just in a major car accident.
Yeah. And so then I got back to the hospital probably 2:45 because I live really far away from that hospital. Mm-hmm. And didn't sleep at all. One of the nurses there was so nice to me. Her name was Carrie. And I'd never seen her. I had never saw her again after we left. But she was on our watch like nights for a while. And then I saw her in the hallway to kind of give her updates here and there. But she was never on our service again after the first few nights.
If you know Victoria's daughter, she wants to grow up so bad. Uh-huh. She has always been like, you know, when she was 3 going on, we say she was going on 13. Now she's 13 going on 30. Like she's just always wanted to be, she's carried herself and tried to be mature. Right. And
she was 11 at the time.
And seeing her, and you know, she's your child. She's your baby. And I could just like, you see her on that bed, the way she was like, her legs were like all kind of scrunched up. And, you know, in this situation, they have to put diapers on them. And she was in a diaper and she looked like a baby. She looked like your little baby.
I know.
You know, I think she just had on like the hospital gown, a little diaper, and socks to keep her feet warm. And all I could picture was, even though she's 11,
right,
that's your baby.
I know.
And I just like feel like I just couldn't let you go and your son go, and I hugged you guys. Like, I remember when I was there when she was born.
Yep.
I was the doting auntie, you know. Your first 2 came around before I had kids of my own, and I almost kind of felt like she's my family too.
Yeah, like by proxy, your kids by proxy.
Yeah. I shed a lot of tears with you and for you, for sure.
Yeah, it was really scary.
Yeah.
And it was really sad.
The unknowns.
And I didn't know how scary and sad it was going to become. Like, I didn't even know. Everybody, I felt like all of these doctors that would come in, the one thing that nurse Carrie said to me was that the main neurosurgeon who oversees all of the brain injuries, he's from Johns Hopkins in St. Pete. Mm-hmm. And he just came here 18 months ago. Had this happened 18 months ago, we'd have been airlifted to the St. Pete hospital. But because he's here now, kind of on rent or something, that he still works for Johns Hopkins, but he like does his stuff here, I guess. I don't know. But all the nurses and all those people around on this floor have only been dealing with brain injuries for 18 months because they'd never had an opportunity to really pay attention and see them before. Mm. So when they're saying stuff, the ICU doctors too, they're not brain specialists. They're just keeping your kid alive. They're not brain specialists, you know? So she's like, just take what they say with a grain of salt. Don't totally freak out. She's like, I've seen people in really terrible situations turn around and look like nothing has ever happened. So like, don't freak out, you know? And there was another, she was a physical therapist that specialized in like neuro stuff. She told me that her daughter had a stroke at 9 months old from a blood clot that they didn't know that she had. And her MRI looks identical to my daughter's MRI. And her daughter was then at the time 13. And she's like, I see a couple of deficits, but nobody would never, ever know. You know, she's like, as a professional, I see deficits but normal people would never know, you know. So those are the only two people that gave me hope. Everybody else scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Scared the shit out of me every day. One doctor came in. He was young and really nice in some aspects, but then he'd like give you these like hard truths. And he's like, you know, I'm really concerned about her urine output. Too much urine indicates severe traumatic brain injury and da-da-da-da-da. And then she ended up having a second MRI or a first MRI. They gave her 3 CT scans total, and then they gave her 1 MRI. And then that's when the neurosurgeon came in and talked to me about the results of the MRI, that she, in fact, does have a severe brain injury, severe traumatic brain injury, a diffuse axonal injury, and they're shearing on her brain. And they said that when she hit her head, because essentially what had happened was they got T-boned by a dump truck. And the impact, even though the outer impact of the car didn't look bad, it's the internal impact in people inside the car, because they're, you know, it was such when their cars have so much metal and not enough, like, I don't know, like styrofoam or stuffing, there's nothing to brace that impact.
Because we didn't talk about this earlier, we just now said dump truck. Dump truck versus smart car.
But dump truck versus any car.
Yeah, I mean, I think any normal person would be like, there's no way,
right? Even
that
if
somebody could survive that.
Camry.
I mean, just look, we just the other day a dump truck accident in a town a little bit south of us where a mom was taking her kid and the kid's friend to school in the morning, and they got plowed and the mom died, and the kids are in critical condition. I don't even know if they've made it. This was just a few days ago.
Right.
And I like this the very next day. I think there was another one. Like dump truck drivers.
There was one down here.
Get it together, please.
I know.
Look out for each other.
I know. And I guess he was going too fast with too heavy of a load and didn't stop. That's all I know. I've never gotten a full report on anything. Anyway, so yeah, it was just a long process of getting like a diagnosis, I suppose. And she was on intubation for like 4 or 5 days. And it was really scary for me when they were going to take her out of it. They can't keep her out of sedation too long, because if her brain starts swelling again, then they're going to have to go in and like relieve the pressure with like a drill.
Yeah.
And we really wanted to avoid that.
Right.
Clearly. So they took her out of the sedation. She wasn't opening her eyes. She was in a lot of pain. She kept moving and thrashing around. So they put her back under sedation. They did have her on like fentanyl and I don't even know, so many different drugs to keep her calm.
Yeah.
To get the brain from swelling and the pain managed and all that. But it was like 4 or 5 days. Every morning I'd be there for morning rounds.
Yeah.
Every day I heard them say the same thing. And on day like 5 or 6, they're like, broken clavicle. And I'm like, what? They said she broke her collarbone. I said, since when? Because y'all have been rolling her on that side. And she'd been like howling in pain. And no wonder, you know?
And I think if I remember correctly, she did have some bruising that was just from the seatbelt, right? Didn't she?
She had bruising on her chest that came out later. So I did. I talked to her a lot. I talked to her like I would normally talk to her if she were like awake. And I'm like, listen, I'm going to take a couple pictures of you. I'm just going to take a couple, you know, because one day you're going to tell me you've never done anything for me. And now I'm going to have proof that I was here every single day taking care of you in your most needed hour. But I really wanted to take a couple pictures of the bruising and things just for documentation purposes,
of course, yeah.
And things. But I remember I was telling her that. because that's how we joke, you know. But she had some bruising on her eye socket. And I kept thinking under her eyes were bruised, but it was all her mascara that she was wearing. Because again, she wants to grow up fast. She was wearing mascara that day, I guess. And it was all like shadowed under her eyes.
Yeah.
The accident was on April 14th. This is April 17th. She opened her eyes twice that day.
Yeah. I cried when you told me that.
Yeah. They said that her brain was like a bowl of Jell-O had gotten shaken up. And the brain doesn't like that. Her blood work and her vitals are really good. She did have brain bleeding, but it wasn't a continual bleed. It was slight bleeding. So the shearing is like where the folds of your brain rub together. And that's where the bleed came from, was like kind of like almost like bruising. There was no more swelling. The brain was still swollen, but it wasn't increasing the swelling, which was what they wanted to see. They turned off her ventilator and they had put it to, I think, 16 breaths a minute, and she was on 20 by herself. She still wasn't, you know, awake. She was opening her eyes here and there, but she wasn't like looking you in the eye when you talked to her. She wasn't turning her head toward you. She was like blank. The neurosurgeon, after he saw her MRI, so he told me that she had damaged her corpus callosum the most. There was a lot of damage throughout the brain, particularly the corpus callosum, which is like the highway that your right and left brain talk to each other. There was a lot of damage there. She wasn't moving her left side at all. He had told me that based on the scan alone, I should be expecting vegetative state. They're looking for some kind of like purposeful movement. So hold up 2 fingers, thumbs up, yes, no, whatever, you know, with your hands, thumbs up, thumbs down, something that would indicate that there is brain activity rather than just a blank stare. Because like she'd itch. I'm like, she's scratching her face. And they're like, that's an involuntary movement because your brain, you have an itch, you go to scratch it. That's not purposeful.
It's more primitive.
Right. It's primitive, right. So this is more, they're looking for purposeful movement. And she wasn't doing any of that. And they kept telling me how this is not good. We don't like this at all. And she wasn't moving her left side at all.
Is that when you kind of came to just, you know, logical reasoning that she got hit on that side?
Well, yeah, we knew she got hit on that side, but
I mean,
the right brain is what controls the left brain, the left side of the body.
Okay.
You know? So they were like, she got hit on the left side, then the brain would slam into the right side of her skull, which could cause damage. And the fact that the corpus callosum is damaged with that highway back and forth from the right side to the left side to tell the right side what to do, the left side what to do.
Was it assumed that her and Nana banged heads in the impact?
I don't know. I mean, I have a million theories about what happened in that car. You have to remember, when she finally came to, it was a very slow process.
How many days was it? She had opened her eyes, but when did she start to like motion? Like when did she start to use, like, because you taught her sign language, so she knew some sign.
Right. She knew yes and no. That was something that she knew right away.
So I got a good 5 or 6 days after.
Yeah. So probably, I would say probably April 19th or so is when she started to actually do the yes and no. But she wouldn't really follow your eyes, wouldn't follow your face. You'd look at her, she wouldn't look at you, and you'd call her name, she wouldn't look at you. But if you'd say, like, are you cold? Give me a thumbs up or thumbs down, or give me a yes or a no. And I ended up moving from the yes and no sign language to thumbs up, thumbs down, because the nurses and the doctors didn't know sign language, so it wasn't helpful. When they'd be like, oh, that's just a involuntary twitch of her hand, and I'm like, no, bro. She's nodding her hand up and down. That means yes. You know? And they would just... So I ended up just saying, listen, we're going to change gears here, friend. We're going to do thumbs up, thumbs down. And so that's what we ended up doing. And
she understood that.
She did. Yeah. I was really excited about that.
That was really great. It was really great progress.
Yeah. And so my husband would have to drop the kids off at school. He had 2 separate schools to drop the kids off to every day. Drive 45 minutes to the hospital. But by the time he got there, he only could be there for like an hour or 2, and then he'd turn around and make sure he could pick up the girls from elementary school at 2:10, and then my son at 4:00.
Yeah.
So he was only able to come out he came out every day, but he was only able to come out for like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And of course he came out in the middle of the day when they're giving her different medications for sleeping and sedating her, because people with a traumatic brain injury can get very agitated, and that can just increase the brain swelling. So they have to kind of keep them calm. It's kind of like nap time. And then that's when I would go downstairs and eat. And that's when I would call everybody that called me, give everybody updates, you know, talk to people and things like that. I'd go downstairs into the garden and eat my lunch and things. But one time, my husband had some errands to run before he came to visit. They knocked her out with the sedatives. And then he was there while she was sleeping the whole time. And so he wrote her a really cute note on a whiteboard, and I took a picture of it. It was really cute. And so at this point, she was getting out of the bed, but she was paralyzed on her left side. So I'm like picking her whole body up to bring her to the couch to sit next to me, to lean on me. And I showed her this whiteboard. Dad left you a note. And her eyes went from top to bottom, left to right. And then as soon as she got to the end where it said, "Love, Dad," she just started bawling.
No.
I was like, oh my God, I think she read that.
Yeah, she did.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
She can read. You know, I didn't know.
Right.
We had no indication that she even knew what was going on. We didn't know. And then my mom was able to recover her phone out of my grandma's car. I charged it for her. And the second she saw it, she wasn't even talking yet. She wasn't doing anything. The second she saw it, she went to like lunge off the bed for it. I was like, oh dear.
11-year-old.
Uh-huh. And
she wants to grow up. She knew.
She knew her 6-digit password.
That's crazy.
Her hand was kind of shaking because she's not right-handed. She's left-handed. Left hand is paralyzed. So her hand was kind of wonky on the numbers. So it took her a really long time to actually get it. But I'm watching her because now I need to know her password. Because I got to snoop and see what this girl's been up to. I'm snooping. You know, well, she's sleeping, I'm snooping. Because I also wanted to tell her best friend. Her best friend's been texting her and texting her and texting her. And I'm like, I've got to
She's going to listen to this and she's going to be like, yo, Mom, what the heck?
Oh, she didn't do anything wrong. I didn't see anything. If she did, she knew how to delete stuff. She did a good job deleting because there was nothing. I mean, there's some cussing between her and her friends, but I'm like, okay, I did that too.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Like,
yep,
whatever. The same as me.
Except we were writing letters.
Right. We didn't text. Exactly. So
I still have those, by the way.
I have those. I have all of our letters from middle school.
in a binder, a trapper keeper.
What we need to do, mine are all still folded.
We should have an episode and read our letters.
Ew, no. Oh, no. I don't even know what they say. So embarrassing.
Oh, I know some things that they say.
I do too.
Very inappropriate. That would be an explicit episode for sure.
I remember writing them for sure, but I have all of your letters in a Ziploc bag still folded in those little like football folds.
Oh, that's
and
so cute.
They're all still folded. So the pencil probably is no longer legible. But what would be really cool is if I can read them, if we could like chronologically put them in, you to me, me to you.
Oh, that would take a gazillion years.
But wouldn't that be so cool?
That would be cool, but I don't think we dated them.
Put a little book together.
We didn't date them though.
No, you're probably right. But if we read them, what were we talking about? You know, and like
boys.
This must have gone with this, and you know, what are you doing right now? I'm in 7th grade English class. What are you doing right now? All in a. It wasn't even texting. It was so stupid. I would love to read them though. That'd be really funny.
You should read them to your daughter, see what she thinks.
Oh God, no.
Yeah. So you had her phone. She was super excited. She saw it. She unlocked it.
Oh man, it was so. You know, sometimes you just got to find the humor in things because you're in such a crappy situation. You really need that levity and that like comic relief.
No.
But what was really very sad. Yet I found it very comical at the time. It was just, I don't know. It wasn't funny. It was funny a little. She wouldn't open her mouth to eat, refused to eat. But then she found the DoorDash app on my phone because I was getting a lot of DoorDash. People kept buying me gift cards and stuff. And she was going through the pictures of the food. And she'd be like,
I think I remember
and then
you telling me that.
Go to the next picture, which looked even better. And she'd be like, oh, and the next picture, oh. And I was like, I wish you would just eat. She was just howling at this food. I'm like, why are you torturing yourself?
Wants it so bad.
Give me the phone.
Like mother, like daughter. No,
she wouldn't let it go. Listen,
we love food.
I love food. Me and food have a very toxic relationship, though. But it's okay.
That's such a great comical relief moment right there. I love that.
Sad. It was so sad.
Sad but funny.
It was so funny. And I felt so bad. And She would not open her mouth to eat. The speech therapist kept coming in and trying to get her to try popsicles, trying to get her to try, pudding, anything that would get her to open her mouth. She'd rub the popsicles on her lip. Her lips are blue, trying to put the popsicles on her lip just to try to get her to open her mouth she refused to open her mouth. Like, do you want to try chocolate pudding? And she'd give a thumbs up. Do you want to try vanilla pudding? Thumbs up. Blue popsicle, thumbs up. Red popsicle, thumbs up. Mac and cheese, emphatic thumbs down. Pumping it up and down, absolutely not.
And that is her.
She hates cheese.
Hates cheese.
She emphatically said, I hate cheese when she was 5 years old, and refuses to eat it ever since. She can't even be in the room with me when you're eating cheese. String cheese can't even be close to you. I paid her $100, probably, 3 weeks before the accident. Somebody had given me a $100 tip at work, and I was like, had a fresh, crisp $100 bill. And I said, listen, I'm going to give you this $100, but you have to eat this cheese stick. And she's like, really? I was like, here's the rules. You can't spit it out. You can't throw it up. And you have to act like you love it.
Did she do it?
She totally did it.
Did she?
She's standing over the trash can just in case. She's like,
she gagging?
Yum, with this smile on her face.
She got that $100?
She got that $100 and she spent it on Amazon.
Yes, this girl hates the cheese, especially mac and cheese.
Yeah, hates it.
I don't know what kind of kid she is. She's a special one, that's for
mine.
sure.
I love cheese. But yeah, so she was very much not like cheese. So that was I was very happy to hear that. Mm-hmm. But she refused to open her mouth to eat. So they had her on a feeding tube, an NG tube down her nose, and she kept pulling at it. So they kept trying to tie her down. And eventually I had to get to a point where before she was sitting up, after she had gotten out of the coma, I'm like, I had to explain to her, I said, listen, I'm going to take your hands out of these restraints, but you cannot pull this out. Mm-hmm. I'm watching, I was standing over her with my hands ready to grab her hand, Mm-hmm. You cannot pull this out because that's not a fun time putting it back in. Trust me. You don't want to, be awake when they're putting this thing back in. You're going to be gagging. It's going to be awful. And so she gave me a thumbs up. I was like, okay. So I undid the restraints. She immediately went to put her hand up to her face, and I went to grab it, and she was just itching the tape around her nose. Because she kept her hand could only go so far, and she's trying so hard to get her neck down there. And I'm like, why does she want to pull this out so much? I'm sure it's uncomfortable, but she just wanted to itch
had
her face.
itch. Poor baby.
I know. I felt so bad. So I'd always be like, I'll itch for you. You don't have to worry about moving your arms. I'll itch your arm. She couldn't move her other one. I'm like, I'll scratch it for you. So I'd scratch it all around the tape around her nose all the time. And then another funny thing that happened was she kept wanting, before she could talk again, before she started using her words, my husband would come and then go back to pick up the kids. And so she'd always video call him. He's like, I'll call you when I get home. I'm driving, so I can't be on video chat. And then he'd hang up because she refused to hang up. And then she'd immediately call him back, redial. And he's like, hey, honey, I just told you I'll call you back when I get home. I'll be home in 10 minutes and I'll call you back. I promise. And he'd hang up. Redial. And he's like, listen, I'm going to call you when I get home. If you call me again, I'm not going to answer the phone because I'm trying to drive. And so she threw my phone and the bracelet that he gave her clear across the room. And then I text him. I'm like, she's acting like you guys had a bad breakup. You're a boyfriend that just dumped her. She's so sad. She was just crying and wouldn't calm down. He totally rejected her, Oh. It was so sad.
I don't think I've heard that one before.
It was so funny too, because she's making progress.
Yeah,
she's
showing her true colors are coming out.
Yeah, her emotion. She's showing she doesn't like something. This one nurse was she was getting kind of agitated, and everybody kept bringing her stuffed animals. And so the nurse had grabbed the stuffed animal and was like, do you want your baby? Do you want your baby? Dancing with this stuffed animal. And she looked at this nurse and just put her middle finger right in her face, just flicked her off. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And the nurse was like, are you kidding? This is what I want to see. Yeah. She's telling me she doesn't like what I'm doing. She's communicating with me. And this is fantastic. And I was like, yeah.
They're like, that's my girl. Yeah. She's in there.
And then there was a male nurse. He was probably 25 and he was really cute. And he would come in the room and she would he was the first person that she would make eye contact with and follow along in the room. Mm-hmm. And she would just like, and put her hair behind her ear and like, and he'd like kind of flirt, hey girl, and like talk to her because he could tell that she was, really into him. It was so funny. I don't even remember his name, but it was so funny. To make a real long story, not so long, she wasn't eating. So 11 days after the accident, they put a G-tube in her stomach. And because the NG tube can cause sinus issues and things like that, and they don't really want to have that in for too long. Mm-hmm. So they ended up putting a G-tube in. She had to be out of the ICU for 2 days before she was technically what they would consider safe to travel, to go to the rehab center 4 hours away in Orlando. Mm-hmm. So we had to move from the ICU to the pediatric floor for 2 days. And so the nurses were just gracious enough to let her sister spend the night for 2 nights. This was the first time I put her in real clothes. Mm-hmm. I was able to put her back in real clothes. We got her a shower. Her hair was so matted, and I had to put it up in a bun, and the whole back became this big, huge, thick dread. And the nurses like got some shampoo or got some conditioner and picked it out. There was like 5 ladies just standing around her picking this thing out of her hair. And then I was able to finally get her in the shower. Mm-hmm. This was after the surgery and everything. And so she was actually able to be fed in the G-tube, which was really good because then she had a little bit more energy and stamina, because otherwise she was on IV nutrition for 11 days. Mm-hmm. And so then she finally had not a full meal because they had to go really, really slow. Not eating for 11 days. They had to go really slow and give her like teeny tiny little meds and teach me how to use it, how to clean it, and how to feed her, and how to do the whole thing. So I took her sister into the cafeteria to pick out something to eat. She got like chicken nuggets and something. And I asked my daughter, we wheeled her in with a wheelchair. I'm like, do you want to try something? And she said, yes. I said, okay. And I'm like, what do you want? Well, you want to get some pudding? Yes. So I bought her a pudding, chocolate pudding. She sat there and ate the entire thing. And I was like, oh my God, she's eating, you know?
Like, remember when I was talking about the pancakes? Like, yeah. Did you have that, like...
I was so excited.
It brings tears to your eyes.
I sent you a picture.
When your kid hasn't eaten in so long and they eat some little thing, doesn't matter what it is. Yep. You're just like, hallelujah.
I know. The next morning, she was eating Jell-O and drinking Gatorade out of a straw. And I remember I sent you a picture, and I'm like, look. I said something like, no big deal, or whatever. Like,
I love
just
that.
have some Jell-O, no big deal. Feeding herself with her right hand.
So much progress.
Her sister was there, and I know that made all the difference. I don't care what anybody says. Having her there, they would cuddle on the bed and watch movies. Aww. Having her presence there was so helpful. Mm-hmm. And then that was only for 2 days, because then we got moved to Orlando. Mm-hmm. We took an ambulance transport to Orlando, and they timed it out so she would be sedated on the gurney. They had to like gurney her and tie her down on this gurney for the 4-hour drive. And we had such an amazing experience at the rehab. Every day they would come into the hospital room, and at like 4:00 the night before, they'd come in and change her calendar to keep all the kids on schedule. They had these little slip calendars where they'd slip the times and the things, like PT's at this time, OT, speech, and then they'd put the time so they can kind of keep up and know what their schedule is tomorrow. But it was so boring. We couldn't leave. There was only so much you could do. So I created our own little pieces of paper that I would slip in for fun things to do. So I gave her options, like we'd have ice cream party night, we'd have dance party, movie night, spa night. I had gotten Walmart Plus delivery. We had like face masks, and I did like foot bath night, where I'd do like a foot bath and like pedicure. I'd paint her toenails, give her a foot massage, bought like bentonite clay, and I used those little like tubs that they give you in the hospital to give her foot baths. And we just had all kinds of fun nights and different events. It was really, really cool.
I bet that was a really great for you too, like a bonding experience, because you worked so much during that time and you had to put everything on pause and really got to like reconnect with her.
Oh yeah.
On a level that you probably haven't done since she was really tiny.
And like reconnect with me too, right? Because I'm busy all the time.
Right.
Like work comes first, because work is what pays for us to not be homeless and hungry. So work is is a huge priority of mine. I mean, I created this business from like literally nothing. And of course, my crew that works for me stepped up and just took over. My customer base was really understanding, very, very kind. And my crew like literally just took over. Like one of my girls came to the office and was like, how do I bill stuff? How do I do it? And I had to teach her how to do everything when we were at the hospital. Yeah, I was there. We were there almost a month. So in total, we were out. I was away from my other kids and out doing this whole thing for almost 2 months. It's like just short of 8 weeks.
Wow.
And they came up once in Orlando. It was the Mother's Day weekend that they got to come up. But it's one person in the room at a time. So it was like there were so many parameters on visitation. We could visit in the cafeteria, but it's like, my kids and my husband stayed at the Ronald McDonald House, which was really nice that they let them do that. But like we can't go anywhere. We can't do anything. We can't hang out in the room and watch a movie. We're literally just sitting in a cafeteria in a busy hospital.
Right.
There's no point in driving 4 hours. We did a lot of FaceTimes.
Right.
They did a lot of Baby Yoda dance parties. So my youngest would have her Baby Yoda, and then my daughter in the hospital would have her Baby Yoda that she just got, and they'd be on FaceTime just having Baby Yoda dance parties. I'd put music on in the background, and it was so funny. She wanted to talk to everybody on FaceTime all day, every day.
And at this point, how much really was she talking?
At this point, she was talking, but mentally she was about 8 years old.
Yeah.
For a long time, she stayed in that 8-year-old space. And in hindsight, I'm really, really glad that I got to experience 8-year-old her again, because she's wanted to grow up so fast for the last few years. And just like the reason why I didn't even know she was home the day of the accident is because she's like, all she wants to do is be on the phone with her friends. You remember being 11. We were on the phone all the time. And my parents would be like, you just got, left school from each other. What else?
What else do you have to talk about?
Yeah. And we're like, you have no idea, And, she was at the age where everything and everyone except her friends sucked. So she was always in her room on the phone. And, it's part of life and it didn't bother me.
Yeah. And you thought she was in her room on her phone.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. That's pretty much where I'm getting at. Yeah. So, and I didn't really mind it because it kept her like preteen attitude contained in there.
Yeah.
And like not in my face.
Yeah. Yeah. You choose your battles.
Yeah.
When
So I was like,
age.
cool, talk to your friends. Bye.
I'm sure plenty of mothers can relate to that.
I remember when she was in the coma, I was talking to her. I'm like, listen, I know you have an attitude and everything. And I know that it's not like my favorite and I'm not always like the nicest about it, but I'll take it. Come back.
Yeah.
Just come back to me. I didn't know how to come to terms with the fact that I'm going to probably have to grieve the girl I knew and fall in love with a new version of her. And I was really scared about that because I really, really, even though she's preteen, grumpy, I really like my girl the way she was.
Right.
Yeah. She's fierce and doesn't take shit from anybody. And I love that. She's going to have to polish it up a little bit.
You got to survive raising her first.
Right. I love that personality trait. Raising that personality trait sucks sometimes, but I know she's going to be such a fierce woman that's not a people pleaser and not a pushover. And I cannot wait to meet that person. And then having to think about grieving, the idea of that really was very tough.
Yeah.
And then in Orlando, we were, she was coming back, but slowly. She was very young. You got to remember, her brain injury, the movie 50 First Dates, I lived that for months. There's certain areas of that I still live. Her memory's, spotty. And her short-term memory has been affected by this. There was a movie, they had 5 movies that we could watch there. One was the new Cinderella, the musical. Very cheesy movie. And she wanted to watch it every day, multiple times a day. She'd be like, oh, Cinderella, we should watch that. Okay.
And it was I remember you telling me it was her watching it for the first time. Every time. Yeah.
Every time. And then if we had to pause to go to PT or OT, she'd come back and she'd say, oh, Cinderella. I'm like, yeah, we can pick up where we left off. I haven't seen it before. I'm like, okay. Whatever you want, dear. I know those songs up and down. And eventually it became a very cute movie. I had to get through the cheese first about the first 15 times I watched it. And then after that, I was like, this is actually really cute. Every night she would choose ice cream party night. Every night. And so I'm like, we had that last night. She's like, I don't remember. I'm like, here are the pictures. I don't remember. So we have to do it again. So the nurse's station had food that we could take. You can take whatever you want. So I would make a mom flurry / Vic Flurry instead of a McFlurry. So I would crush up like Oreos or crush up like shortbread cookies or whatever and like mix it with these tiny little cups of ice cream. Like you've seen the little individual serving ones at the store. They were like those. So it wasn't a lot of ice cream, but it was better than nothing. And so we'd have a mom flurry / Vic Flurry every night.
I love that about you. You're just such a creative person that you can do stuff like this. Cause I wouldn't know what to do.
I had time to be creative. I had time to like, I almost said I had time to care, but I honestly had time to care about doing fun stuff because I didn't have that. And you know, the kicker was I put everything that I was used to on hold to be here. She couldn't care less about me being there. She wanted dad. She wanted him so bad. Every day. And then this kid who was so picky about food pre-accident, like to the point where she would like sit on the floor in the pantry and sob saying we don't feed her because we have nothing she likes. Mm-hmm. Very picky. And it was very hard to deal with that. And I'm like, don't go to school telling people we don't feed you. First.
Right.
Look at this pantry. It's full. Find something. And, oh, you don't feed me. It was very dramatic. And then when we're in the hospital or when we're in the rehab center and she's eating this garbage food, because she's eating by mouth at this point, fully eating by mouth. But she kept saying, oh my God, this food is delicious. I'm like, what? Compliments to the chef, she said to this one lady. I was like, oh my God, the microwaved food? All right. Like, cool. Like, keep eating. But we had to thicken her liquids. I had to thicken her liquids for months, even after she came home, because they did a swallow study and she was aspirating and they didn't want her to get pneumonia. And, she wasn't paralyzed on her left side fully. She was very dull on her left side. So the PT there really helped get that left side back in motion and get it back to working. But I think what the problem was that nobody really considered until I brought it up was she's paralyzed on her left side. Her face was paralyzed. That was the last to come back. It kind of came back toes to face. Mm-hmm. And her throat is part of that paralysis.
Yeah.
Maybe the left side of her throat's not working. Maybe it's like she can't feel, so she's aspirating or something. And they were like, oh, never thought about that. Yeah, that could be a possibility. Never even thought about it. She needed glasses. Her eyes were affected from the accident, so now she needs glasses.
So when she came home, what was your new schedule as far as like therapies were concerned?
Oh man, we got home on May 25th. We had therapies 3 days a week, but her OT, PT, and speech each were 3 days a week. They would never be scheduled on the same day around the same time frame. So we would have to drive 45 minutes for a 9 a.m. Then we'd come back at 1. Then we'd come back at 3. And it was like 40-minute sessions. It was 3 days a week of this. My entire life was therapies, 45 minutes away at different times of the day. And then we had follow-ups with the neurologist, follow-ups with the neurosurgeon, which, by the way, I just have to say, when we showed up at his office 2 weeks after we got home, I could not have been more proud to show up in this guy's office who told me to expect vegetative state. And she's sitting there in the office, the smile on her face. Hi, how are you?
Amen.
Talking. Now, she doesn't remember things, right? So something we talk about right now, she won't remember it in 5 minutes. Processing time for her started to get, she'd remember it. It would come quicker and quicker that she'd start remembering things. But even today, she's got spotty memory. She'll say, hey, I'm going to lose my phone. I lose everything. It's here on the counter charging. Because, when I ask you, I need you to tell me where it is. She loses her phone. Where's my phone? It's like right next to you, dude. Oh, there it is. She loses it all the time.
I get people that ask still to this day. People still ask about, well, your friend with the little girl who was in the accident. How is she doing? I'm like, she's actually a walking miracle.
Yeah.
I'm like, she's beautiful. She's smart. I'm like, I know she does grapple with some memory issues because of it. I'm like, but you looking at her, you would have no idea what this poor little girl went through.
Yeah.
And it's just, every time I see her, I'm like in awe by that.
I know.
Even when I could see, you know, her little attitude and
Well, that took a long
You know?
time to come back. Her attitude.
Yeah.
She was so kind and sweet.
I remember you saying,
And
you're kind of like, I kind of hope selfishly that this sticks because she's so nice. And I don't know that nice, that sweet version.
Yeah, she was so sweet. And I really enjoyed the youngness of her for a long time. And now, you know, it's been about a year and a half since the accident, and she's
Fully 13 going on 30.
fully 13. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, she's doing really good.
That's
I'm
awesome.
very, very proud of her.
Yeah.
And we homeschooled all of last year. Well, for the first 6 weeks, she wanted to go back to school, but that was like 4 months after the accident. She just was not ready. She could not remember things. You know, she's had a couple neuropsych tests, and you know, she's doing a lot better with the memory for sure. She had a lot of nerve damage in her shoulder, in her neck, the left side of her neck, all the way down to her fingertips. Tons of pain and prickles, and she's doing chiropractic care, and that really helps.
So we know that your daughter is doing great. What about you? What steps are you taking or have you taken to help you? Because you were just so focused on her for so long that you put your own needs on the back burner. You mentioned earlier that you've gotten into therapy.
Right.
So how has that been helping, and have you done anything else?
At the beginning, I had to focus on like laughter and humor. I couldn't, I'm such a compartmentalizer that I had to like put all of this crazy hard stuff away for a while and just be happy. And like, I mean, obviously I wasn't happy, but you know what I mean? Like I had to find levity in situations.
It's not until like you're alone with your thoughts.
Right. And I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts. Like even when I would leave, which was rare, I didn't leave the first hospital. I didn't leave it very often. I think I maybe left 2 or 3 times. I was on the phone the whole time. I would call anybody I possibly could to not be alone with my thoughts. Mm-hmm. Had to have somebody on the phone with me, you know? And yeah, that was like that for a long time. I still just struggle with that now. Like if I'm in the car, I always want to like have a podcast. I'm podcasts are in my ear. Something's on. Mm-hmm. I don't like to be alone with my thoughts.
Is therapy helping?
I should probably bring that up in therapy. I haven't really discussed this yet. So
there you go.
Yeah. Therapy is helping. I originally went to therapy, like I said earlier, so I could see if I was grieving properly, because I didn't feel like I was grieving at all. I felt like I was just kind of like, I've reached acceptance.
Survival mode.
Yeah. Like I'm sad. I know, you know, I didn't do the bargaining and I didn't do all those things. Like I almost moved right over to acceptance mode immediately because I had to accept it. If I didn't accept it, then I'm just going to crumble or something. And we did not tell my kids that my grandma died for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 days. Mm-hmm. We just couldn't even come to terms with that whole situation yet. Like this happened in April of last year, and I just started therapy in January because I'm like, I really probably need to like come to terms with that whole situation on top of everything that we went through.
Yeah, you were really close to her too. Not only your daughter, but I mean, I was actually thinking about this last night when just thinking about preparing for the episode. Was like, I'm pretty sure that she was in photos from my 6th birthday party, which was the first birthday party that you came to. Because she's been in my life pretty much as long as you've been in my life.
Right. Yeah. The relationship that my daughter had with her is exactly the same relationship that I had with her.
Yeah.
That was our thing. We'd watch like TGIF together on Fridays, and she'd make me my favorite dinner, and I was there all summer, every summer. You would come over and swim in the pool. I mean, she was like, you know.
Grandmas are special.
Grandmas are very special. She was one of my favorite people ever. And I think that's the part that hurts the most is like, she's just not here. She's just not here anymore. And I just miss her so much. And I know everybody can identify with that, you know, but when it happens to you, it just feels so hard.
It was so sudden.
There was no plan. Yeah, she had plans to come home.
We thought she was going to outlive everybody. She was in such great shape. She was always so positive and just a light to be around. And yeah, I miss her too.
I think with my daughter, this whole situation, everything kind of overshadowed the loss of Nana.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
and,
for sure.
I feel really bad about that because I wasn't able to grieve her properly. That's why I started therapy, because I didn't know if I was grieving her properly, because I wasn't grieving her at all. I didn't have time.
No.
And I felt really guilty about that.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody grieves in different ways. And it wasn't that I wasn't grieving her. Like, I didn't think about her. I cried at night when I was alone, sleeping on the hospital couch. That's when I cried. But I had to be really strong for my daughter because, you know, she didn't know what happened for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, and I couldn't cry in front of her because then she'd ask why or wonder. They had a psychologist that would come to the room every day to check up on us and everything. She was pressuring me to tell her about Nana. And I'm like, not going to happen. My daughter can't remember what happens in 15 minutes. Why am I going to traumatize her every 15 minutes? Mm-hmm. Like, it's never going to happen. If she can remember something today that happened yesterday, then I will tell her. But I'm not re-traumatizing her soul. Mm-hmm. Not happening. And the lady was like adamant about it. And I'm like,
what the heck?
Good thing it's my kid, because I get to make this call. You don't. Mm-hmm. And eventually she started to remember something, but she kept asking about her. She kept asking, so can we FaceTime Nana? Has Nana called? Does Nana know where we are? Can we FaceTime her? And I was like, well, no, not today. And I never lied to her.
Right.
I never told her, you know, I never lied to her. I just never told her. I never not told her Nana called us, or I never like lied in that way.
Right.
You know, I'm like, not right now. Or I, you know, well, we got to go to PT. And I would just try to change the subject really quickly. But then there was one day where she just kept asking about her. And I'm like, I got to tell you something really, really hard. And it's not going to be easy. And it's going to really, you know, it's really going to hurt. And I told her, because she had asked about like, why am I here? And, you know, I'm like, okay, well, you know, I kept kind of like getting to the point. I'm like, you and Nana were in the car. You guys went to Starbucks, which is why they were over there, because the brand new Starbucks opened up. And so she wanted to treat her, and they took her to Starbucks in the main area of the city. So that's why they were all the way over there. Anyway, so I'm like, you guys went to Starbucks, and, you know, I told you that you get hit by a dump truck, and that's why we're here. And she's like, yeah. And then she kind of put it together. She's like, you said Nana was with me? I said, yeah. She's like, is Nana okay? And I said, that's why I've got to tell you something really hard. And I said, you know, Nana didn't make it from the accident. She died in the accident. And I thought my son's crying was sad. I've fully witnessed somebody's soul break. It was horrible. It was really, really hard to just hear her. That's like her person on this planet. Mm-hmm. And she was just gone. And then she had to like come to terms with that. And I was really worried because she cried and cried and cried. And I was like, okay, let's go outside and get some fresh air. Mm-hmm. So we walk all the way through the building to the elevator. She's still crying. We get on the elevator, the door's shut, and then somebody on the next floor needs to get on, and the door's open. And it was like, second those doors open, she's just fine. There's no more tears. Her face is red from crying. Her eyes are watery. And I look at her and I go, you all right? She's like, yeah, why wouldn't I be? I was like, fuck.
You're going to have to tell her and go through this again.
I have to do this again.
Yeah.
Fuck, man. You know, too soon. I would say probably, I don't know, maybe an hour later, we were back up at the room. She looked at me and she said, Nana's dead, isn't she? I said, yeah. She said, what happened? So she remembered that soul-crushing news. Mm-hmm. So I told her what happened again. Cried, but not sobbed. So every time she would, Nana's dead, right? Yeah. And then she'd cry. But not wail and sob like that very first time. You know, it almost felt like as soon as we got out of the hospital, it was like the beginning of our work. There was a lot of readjustment, getting back into back home with the other kids. And she was so happy to see everybody, and they were happy to see her, and everybody got along really well for like a week. It was really nice.
For a week.
For like a week. Yeah. Before we had like toughs and fights. And then, eventually she got her G-tube out and she's eating by mouth and, she's no longer in therapy. She graduated therapies in May. She still does chiropractic care. And we have a follow-up with her neurologist every 3 months and a follow-up with her outpatient brain specialist every 6 months. We see him again in February. And he wants her to do one more neuropsych test, which is just like in St. Pete. It's a really, really long all-day test. Kind of tells you where the blind spots are in her brain, kind of where she might need some additional resources and help maybe for school. But she was super proud of being like in all advanced classes before the accident. And now she's like in regular. And the ESE teacher just emailed me that she's working with her on her team. And my daughter is like not into it at all. She's really upset about it. So it's really kind of like, it was a source of pride for her as being really smart. And now she's got some setbacks, but it's nothing she can't work through. I hope,
Right.
We'll see. I mean, it's only time will tell.
Right.
Exactly where she lands. Her brain is still in active healing. They said 18 months to 2 years. And then wherever she's at that point is kind of where she's going to be as far as the healing journey for her brain. She still gets a lot of pain in her back and in her shoulder from the nerve damage and just straining and pulling those muscles. But other than that, she's her neurologist cleared her for all sports.
Wow.
Which I was shocked.
Yeah.
They said that they have no problem with her. She wants to play volleyball. They said the ball is so light that they're not really worried about it. And it would take another accident like this to be of severe concern.
Yeah.
She just bumps her head. Like even when she just bumped her head on the way out of the car today, and I was like, do I need to take her to the hospital? Like I get so freaked out.
Yeah.
I get so freaked out.
I don't blame you.
But I mean, we had everything. We did so many things. We had like infected G-tube. We had just oozing, and we were trying to wrap it up for her to go to school for like the first 6 weeks of school. And thank God we took her out of school because that was a nightmare. It would just seep through her shirt. It was horrible. But anyway, so it's all done now. She's got a little scar on her stomach. It's like just northeast of her belly button. And she's very much back to her regular self in a lot of ways. There's some areas where she's, just different. Her siblings notice it too. But
yeah. I love her, and I'm so glad that she's where she's at. Yeah. She could have been so much worse.
Oh, I mean, that's what they expected her to be, so much worse. And that was why I was really excited to bring her back to the neurosurgeon who told me to expect vegetative state, because he could not believe it. He had to go get his partner he's like the PA that works with him. He's like, oh my God, hold on a second. He went and got him. He's like, you have to see this. He's talking to her. Hi.
She's literally a walking
she's like, I'm
miracle.
good. How are you? And then I took her back to the pediatric ICU to see everybody, to like talk to them. And we ran into one of the doctors that worked there, one of the ICU, pediatricians that worked there, who was like on call all the time. She was there for a full week. And we saw her at a restaurant. And she's like, oh my God. I said, I guess I walked up to her. I'm like, do you remember my daughter was in the hospital and you saved her life? And she's like, how could I forget you? It was like 2 months before. How could I forget you?
She was actually, at the scene of the accident, she was actually rescued by somebody who was like an off-duty, right? Like an off-duty nurse or a retired nurse or something. Somebody who was just a bystander who saw it came in there was like another guy too. Because I remember like the story was all over Facebook and like the mom groups, people were talking about it, and I'm like, that's my goddaughter. Right. And so I was like relaying whatever I could find out to you, but like somebody resuscitated her right there on the scene. Like have you ever even found out who that person was? Like, no. What would you say to that person if you could talk to them?
Not only do I want to know who that person is, there was like an off-duty firefighter and an off-duty pediatric ICU nurse that just so happened to be guardian angels that came by. One of them was trying to resuscitate my grandmother and CPR, and one of them was trying to resuscitate my daughter because my daughter was not breathing on scene. I didn't find out until after I got the bill in the mail that they actually had to medevac her to the hospital. The helicopter landed in the center of the road on a busy main road and take my kid who was intubated on scene to the hospital. Nobody told me that. So
if they would not have stopped, she could have died right there.
I know. And you want to know something else that's kind of crazy? My mom still has never gotten a call that my grandmother was in an accident.
Wow.
Nobody called her.
Wow.
And I asked one of the nurses at the hospital why that was. And she said that with adults, you have to just call hospitals and ask, when you go to file a missing persons report, did you call all the hospitals is like the first thing you say, or they tell you, because that's apparently what you have to do. If you're missing somebody and they just don't come home and they're an adult, there's no, like, my grandma had ice in her phone for my mom in case of emergency, Nobody called her.
Wow. So
Never.
doing that is like pointless
Right.
then,
And she ended up being in the hospital that was right next to the accident. She was in their morgue waiting for family to come and question about her.
Jeez.
It was awful. It was like days. My mom was calling every hospital trying to figure out where she was.
Wow.
I think finally, like the third or fourth time she talked to this hospital, or something like that she couldn't. It was awful. Yeah, it was awful.
So,
but
yeah, what would you say?
I would say, I mean, obviously, I would thank them. I mean, I would love to. I more want to show them how great she's doing because of them. Right. And I would also love to say to the dump truck driver, where I would really like to talk to him, because if he is, I mean, I am just going to assume that he's a really, really good person, and this was a really, really terrible accident. Mm-hmm. And I would love to relieve him of that burden that he must be feeling. Right. I can't imagine making one really shitty mistake and killing somebody and not knowing if you killed a kid too. Right. I feel really, really bad, and I really hope that he's okay too, because that's really shitty.
That just shows how great of a person that you are to say that, because so many people would just be filled with hate and anger. Right, but I mean, I've made really shitty mistakes. I text and drive. That could be any of us.
Have you ever texted?
Of course.
What if that's what he was doing? It was just simple. And I don't know. I don't know anything about him, and I feel really bad for him. Yeah. Because I can't imagine if you just make a really shitty mistake and you look up and then this is your life now. Yeah. That's awful. That's awful. So, I mean.
So what advice would you give to any other parent who goes through something similar to this?
Oh my God, I have no idea. Honestly, I mean, there is no advice to give. You just have to do what you do. You have no idea. Mm-hmm. I was very fortunate that my daughter made it to a point where, like, she's functional and she's really, really good. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's just, what am I going to say? Platitudes. Keep your head up. It'll get better. I don't know if it will. Yeah.
But I mean, for their own sake, like, be open to help wherever you can get it. I know you're the kind of person that you don't like to ask for help. You're very much an independent person.
I've been very, very, very quiet about this. Mm-hmm. I do not want people to feel bad for me. I don't want people to, like, I don't know. I don't like asking for help. Mm-hmm. I'm the one that helps. Yeah. I don't like asking I don't want to have to be the one receiving help. I have a very hard time with that. Yeah. I was very grateful for the help that we got. I wouldn't have sought it out myself. Yeah. You did that for me. Mm-hmm. I would never have done that for myself. Yeah. And I'm really glad that you did. But I have a really hard time asking for help. And I guess I would just tell people, don't be like me. Ask for help. Yeah. Financially, ask for help. I didn't work for 7 months. Yeah. And, the GoFundMe and the meal train was amazing. That got us through the first month or two of me not working, but you had talked about your financial burden. My financial burden was vast. Oh, yeah. Not working for so long. It was awful, and I don't think there are foundations. Mm-hmm. I didn't look. Right. Because again, I don't like asking for help. Right. I didn't look. I don't know. Yeah. I'm in one group on Facebook, but it's like for everybody who has traumatic brain injury. Right. So.
Yeah, it's so hard because they're all unique incidents, even if it's, same kind of vehicles. The outcome could be completely different for anybody.
Well, that's the thing about the kids in the rehab center. I asked the nurse, like, because all these kids had, they were like in helmets and in like those electronic chairs that would stand you up, and had trach tubes. And I asked her if she sees traumatic brain injuries like my daughter's often, like with what happened to her. And she looked at me and she said, every single one of these kids was a normal kid before something happened. horseback riding accident, drowning, all of these different situations that can cause a traumatic brain injury. But all these kids at one point were normal kids.
Wow.
I was the only parent that stayed there. All these kids were alone. The nurses were feeding them.
Wow.
The nurses were changing them. The nurses were comforting them. I was the only parent that stayed. So when the parents would come and visit a couple times a week at best, I don't know their situation. I imagine that maybe they had to work. Maybe they're a single mom. I have no idea. I was very fortunate that, my husband could hold down the fort, and I could, I had a business that could at least feed us and keep us afloat, but when they would come and visit, I just I felt so guilty. Like you had talked about last time about your husband's survivor's guilt. So why my kid? Why did my kid went in there on a gurney and walked out with her own 2 feet?
Yeah.
And these other kids, that's not what's going to be the case for them.
Yeah.
And I felt really guilty for a while. It's a weird feeling. Because it doesn't make sense. You're like, I feel so blessed, yet I feel so guilty. It's weird.
I know that feeling. All right, well, we have to wrap this up, unfortunately. We could talk forever, but I love you.
Love you too. Thanks for hanging in there with me with my long-winded tale of terrible times.
If you stuck around for this, thank you. And the next episode, we're going to be bringing in a mutual friend of ours who has a really unique perspective because she's kind of both worlds. She is not only a survivor of trauma, a lot of trauma in her childhood and in her adult life, but that now has led her to a really awesome career where she's able to help other mothers. So we're really excited to talk to her. We're going to have her in the studio soon, and that'll be for episode 4. So thank you for sticking around again. And you could find us on Facebook at I Can't Even Imagine, a podcast for moms. And you can find us on Instagram at ICEI_podcast. And all your favorite podcast networks.
And our Instagram has not.
Oh, yeah. Update on the Instagram thing. If you listen to the last episode, we have not been suspended since, I think, that day.
Yeah.
So
keep crossing your fingers.
Keep crossing your fingers that they'll like us. Our Instagram page is still up and running. We have not been suspended. We are good girls, I promise. We're not posting anything controversial. Come check us out, ICEI_podcast, and find us on Facebook. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.